Very common question here, given that the electrolysis of copper sulfate with carbon electrodes and copper electrodes is a core practical. We have to draw a labelled diagram showing the apparatus. So get your pencil and ruler out. I'm going to use a pen, but get a pencil and ruler. First thing we're going to need is something to contain the electrolyte. For electrolysis, we must have a liquid ionic substance. In this case, the electrolyte is copper sulfate solution. So let's have our copper sulfate. We'll label that straight away. So we're going to have copper sulfate solution. You could label this a solution of copper ions, Cu2+ ions, aqueous, or anything along those lines, but we do need to label it, the electrolyte. Okay, so we're using carbon electrodes in this example. Okay, you can do electrolysis of copper sulfate with either carbon electrodes or copper electrodes. It's carbon electrodes in this example. If it is copper electrodes, the diagram would be absolutely the same. Indeed, that is the next question. This is such a common question in an exam that comes up all the time. The next question will say copper electrodes, exactly the same question, so you will draw exactly the same diagram. The only difference being just putting the level of the copper sulfate in here now. The only difference being, instead of labelling these carbon electrodes, you will label them copper electrodes. So that's a carbon electrode. Now should we make that one the anode, and we can make this one over here the cathode, carbon cathode. Okay, that'll probably get us 1 mark. Next mark, electrolysis needs direct current electricity, so we need a power supply. Also, just for completeness sake, I'm going to put an ammeter in this circuit. An ammeter tells us current flow. We wire ammeters in series. So that would tell us if there's any current flowing. Probably not a marking point, but all the same, it's good to put it there. And we'll probably put a variable resistor in this as well. So we could alter the current flow. In fact, should we do that over here? Not going to be necessary for the exam, but when we did the core practical, we certainly had a variable resistor in there to allow us to change the current between experiments. That's the answer for that question. It's also the answer for this question. The only difference being with this one is we're going to label this copper electrodes. We would label that copper electrodes. We draw exactly the same diagram. And we'd have 2 copper electrodes. Copper. Everything else the same. I'm not doing that with a ruler. I'm not doing it again. That's what we need to do. We need all the labels down here now. The copper sulfate. Oh, let's label that a DC power supply. DC power supply. All the other labels the same. All these questions on ayleshamhighchemistry.com.